everybody, we're just going to get started in a few minutes. Hold tight. Hey, Carrie, can you hear us okay? Before we start recording, I feel like it's good to ask. Let us know in the chat.
Hello.
Hello, just checking, making sure everyone can hear us okay. Please let us know in the chat.
Let us know where you're joining from.
Yeah, I think everyone can hear us, but I'm just looking in the chat, I'm not seeing anybody say hi in the chat yet. I'm getting a message in the chat and see.
I can hear you fine.
Oh, they can't. They said so.
Yes, in the Q&A section.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, right.
Yay! Thanks everybody. We're coming at you live, so thanks for your patience. We're gonna go ahead and get this webinar. We'll start recording so we don't forget. Okay, it already started. That's good. And then we'll go live on Facebook. Great. All right, everybody, hold tight. We're gonna get started in just a second. Okay, we should get started momentarily. We're gonna share to a page. Streaming science. All right, hold tight, everybody. We're just getting ready to go live on Facebook. This is awesome. Hello, everybody. I see someone has their hand raised. Feel free to communicate with us in the chat or Q&A if you're having any issues throughout the presentation. We want to be responsive to you. And if you're not having any issues, if you just have like a fun thought you want to share, or you're just excited about something. Oh, chat is disabled. That's probably for the best. The Q&A is still a great tool. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen because we're gonna get started in 1 minute and get us going with our slides. Very exciting. Okay, so hello everyone. It's so great to have you all here joining us virtually. We are live at a living shoreline right here, right now in Sarasota County. So if at any point we cut out or, we want to make sure the Wi-Fi, stays solid throughout the entire presentation. So if there are any issues at all, don't be shy about communicating with us in that Q&A box and be like, hey, we can't hear you. And we can change our audio and pivot accordingly. But I'm Caroline Nickerson. I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleague Armando. I'll let him quickly introduce himself.
I'm Armando Ueda. I'm the Florida Secret Agent here in Sarasota County.
Awesome. And then we also have someone behind the camera, Anika Ahmed, a good friend of mine, agreed to be our camera person. Anika, everybody can see us okay?
Yes.
Awesome. This is great. Yes, and this is ClimateCast Live. It's part of my dissertation. So we're delighted to have you all here. First and foremost, I wanted to thank some of our partners. So our funders were the North American Association for Environmental Education and SciStarter. They both supported me to be able to, thank people like Armando with an honorarium for being involved. And then we also got IC Change, the Featured Citizen Science Project. Of course, there's UF IFAS Extension. Streaming Science, which is a program of student science communication work based out of the University of Florida. And in my department, we have the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication. Streaming Science is associated with that, which is very exciting. And of course, we have Sea Grant Florida and Sarasota County, which Armando has all those logos on his shirt for Sea Grant and IFAS. So that's important too. But yeah, ClimateCast Live. This is the first in a series of programs that we're going to be doing in the coming days. Tomorrow, I'll be up in Pensacola with Carrie from that extension office, which will be a lot of fun. We have programs in Brevard County, Miami-Dade County, Monroe County, which is the Keys. So if you are interested in tuning into any of those as well, you can go to bit.ly/ClimateCast Live. And before we get into all the good material that you came here today to learn about the living shorelines and ask us questions and be in dialogue with us via this Zoom, just some quick housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded and it's also being live streamed on the Streaming Science Facebook page. So if you have to drop off at any point, never fear. You can find that recording later, which is awesome. And also, if you want to help me do some awesome research, you can participate in follow-up surveys about how this program may have impacted the way you think about the environment and climate change, living shorelines, citizen science, and all the other fun topics that we're going to cover today. So also, the research is not mandatory. So after you watch, you don't have to fill out the surveys. We'd love it if you did. And you can also participate in some interviews, which is great too. All right. So the star of the show today, though, is Armando. So I'm going to pass it to him. And we're going to briefly present some slides to you before we get into the actual living shoreline. So after we present some slides and we give you some framing, I'll stop sharing my screen. And then Nico's going to follow us with the camera. And we're going to show you a living shoreline here live. So Armando, tell us a little bit about climate change and sea level rise.
Yes, definitely. And just a reminder, right? Interact with us when I make a conversation. So put your questions in the questionnaire and I will happy to answer. Anyway, so climate change, right? And sea level rise. So sea level rise driven by climate change is a present risk in the United States. It's very recognized that things are changing, right? And the two major sources of global, well, I guess, sea level rise in terms of global climate, it is the expansion of the thermal expansion of the water itself. So once more CO2 in the atmosphere, the heat has to be reflected to the air, it's absorbed by the ocean. So as you know, ice becomes solid, becomes smaller. If you melt it, it gets quiet because molecules separate. So it's increasing the level of the sea level, basically expanding right there. And also we're losing mass ice, from ice sheets and glaciers, they're melting as well. That's also increasing sea level. And that's our two major causes of sea level because of climate change driven. Next slide. Yeah, yes. We can talk more about it. And this is just a quick sample of this is by NASA. This is an animated video, I guess, cartoon where you can see that the graph on the y-axis. You have the mass of ice lost since 2002 until 2020. They have this graph here, and then the x-axis. I guess you have the time, right? So you can see in this cartoon, which is right now animated, the colors, the bright colors mean that it's getting warmer, and that's the ice that you basically is melting away. And the ice melting away, obviously, is increasing sea level because it's melting and it's going to the ocean. So that's just a quick example. We don't have to play the whole cartoon, but you can find this in
I think we got to the end of it. So
that's
that
right.
out.
Oh, that's perfect. But that's a really good animation because it really shows what the changes are happening. And this is relatively in a short period of time. And next, please.
Yeah.
So how is that going to affect us, right? So what is the impact of sea level rise? Well, it's not going to be across the planet the same way, right? Sea level is increasing in some areas more than others. It is estimated here around the Gulf of Mexico, where we are, Sarasota County. It's about, I think it's 14 to 18 inches in the next 30 years. And that's a high substantial, increase of sea level. And then we have that, because of that levels are increasing, also you're going to have tides and a storm surge reaching farther inland, right? And heights as well. And that's going to have some impacts we're going to talk about in a second.
So interesting. So to summarize, just for my learning so far, so basically ice is melting, and that is because the climate is changing.
Yes.
Temperatures on average are getting warmer, and that is causing the sea levels to get higher because of that melting ice.
Absolutely, because the melting ice is because expanding of water. So water gets warmer, molecules expand, so it's also increasing the level because it's basically puffing up kind of thing.
Good to know.
Maybe not the best scientific description, but I imagine it.
Hey, that helps me. So it's just kind of getting bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of these impacts? Well, when you think about it, right, most people live in our country and actually around the globe, most people live around the coastlines. So we have most of the population is around coastlines, coastal, counties that are like Sarasota County on the coastline. And that if you start increasing sea level, obviously it's gonna impact our population, right? It's gonna affect jobs, people like, roads being flooded, habitats being destroyed, ecosystem shift, and infrastructure being damaged. And one of them that we're going to be talking quite a bit today, because we're talking about living shoreline, is erosion, right? So erosion is going to happen. It's going to increase in some areas because, like I said before, tides are getting higher, right? Storm surge are getting heights and they're reaching new lands. So it's going to be some erosion, which erosion is a natural process, right? If you live by the water, if you live, in the shoreline, if you live by the coastline, you're always going to have erosion issues that you have to manage. But now this is making it worse. So so it's going to increase erosion, which can affect our counties and, our economy and the way of life. So that's what we're going to be talking about, kind of, detailing what can we do about that issue. Next slide, please.
Yeah, well, and really quickly,
Yeah.
I'm just curious. So sea levels go up, and that's bad because we live on the coast. The coast is a
Yes.
beautiful place to live, but we have built our cities for lower sea levels, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So when the sea level goes up, it can flood our infrastructure.
Absolutely.
You see water on the roads.
Yes, so we have to adapt, right? We have to come up with plans to mitigate these things, to be able to adapt. And these levels happening at rising, so it increases. You have to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And there's better ways to do certain things, and that's what we're going to be talking about, living shorelines.
Got it.
Yes.
This is exciting. So living shorelines are a way of mitigating the negative effects of sea level rise. So making it so we have less erosion.
Yeah, let me explain that
Yeah.
So we have erosion, right? So how do normally we deal with erosion? So your shoreline is eroding. Normally, one of the most common practices is to harden it, like make it stronger, make it hard, so the soil basically doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But one of the traditional ways is using what we call gray infrastructure. So using like riprap or seawall, which it doesn't really do a good job. Short term it kind of does, but long term it doesn't, because and for several things. A seawall, for example, like you can see in this picture, right? It's a wall, concrete wall. That doesn't really absorb the energy. Let's say you have a storm surge, right? You have a current coming and a wind driven. It's basically hitting the seawall and it's just sending the force away. It's not absorbing it in, so it's not decreasing the force. You're sending it away, and you actually might be causing erosion in some other places, right? And that's one issue. So it's not really a good way to correct. There's better ways to do it when you have the place. Not every place is suitable for a living shoreline, but there's a lot of places that they can go away without having to use great infrastructure. And the other thing, when you come up with sea level rise on top of it, right? Sea levels increasing. Well, you cannot be increasing the height of your seawall.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, it's a certain point that you're not gonna barricade yourself behind a wall.
Yeah.
That's not the ideal. And plus, you take away a lot of what we call ecological services that nature provides. Just to give you an example, I don't know if you can see in the picture right there, not the one with the seawall coming off to the water, but the other one to my left, you see horseshoe crabs. Those are two pairs of horseshoe crabs. They're coming together, trying to spawn, trying to release the eggs in the shoreline, but they're here hitting a seawall, so they don't have that connectivity anymore. So we're losing a lot of those interactions, right? A lot of these animals cannot move into the shoreline.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that we're affecting. So there's other things like, right, growth of plants, moving of animals, many other things. So we're losing all the services, all this, so that ecosystem. So that's another reason why maybe we should be moving away for great infrastructure when we can, and that's when living shorelines come into place. So next slide.
So
please.
exciting.
Yeah. So what is a living shoreline? Because that's like, so what is a living shoreline?
Yeah.
It's not like it doesn't have a real definition, and I guess it does, but it's more like a way to do things. It's a methodology. You have to use natural elements, and depends where you are. Those elements gonna change. We're gonna be talking to you about it when being followed by the camera. But in the area, for example, mangroves, oysters, salt marshes, those are natural elements that we utilize to stabilize the shoreline, and they do sometimes, well, for most part, better job at maintaining your soil than a great infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm going to point out too is that they actually adapt and get stronger over time.
Yeah.
So like, plants will grow, and I'll show you that behind us. We have a beautiful example of a living shoreline is becoming stronger over time. So sea level rises, right? So your shoreline is basically becoming stronger, with time, so making it even more resilient over time and preparing us better to this kind of effect that we're going to be seeing, all this, at least the impact of sea level rise.
That's the cool thing about, from what you're telling me about these living shorelines, it seems like infrastructure that gets better over time, because normally when you build a seawall, it gets worse over time.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the other thing. Yeah, seawalls have a lifetime of 25, 20 years, 30 years. Well, depends, how lucky you can be. And then you have to rebuild it.
Yeah.
A living shoreline, if it's done correctly, you might have to do some changes through time, right? To put some elements and stuff like that, but it gets only stronger over time. That's the concept of it. So it becomes more resilient and allows, again, all this natural process that, benefit us in many different ways. And I'll talk about this too in a second as well.
Question break.
All right, question break.
Well, I have a question while we wait for people to get their questions in the Q&A. And if you're watching the Facebook live stream, you can still join on Zoom and get some questions to us live by going to bit.ly/ClimateCast live and registering for the Sarasota program on that page. So there's still a chance for you to get on Zoom with us and ask us some questions. But I'll kick one off. Okay, so what is erosion? Like, what's the basic definition?
Okay, so the basic, well, I don't know if that's the the dictionary or definition, but the way I see erosion is, it's loss of landmass loses sediments, right? And again, it's a natural process. Like a lot of the Berry Islands,
Yeah.
they're meant to move, right? They're dynamics. So wind moves sand and water moves sand and accumulates certain areas, and then natural processes, that sand moves away. But now we live in those areas, so we don't want that, that for some of this system or some of these shorelines to go away because we actually live there. We don't want to lose them, so we want to do mitigating against erosion. So erosion again is a natural process, but sometimes you want to go kind of like slow it down or stop as much as you can to save coastlines, right? To prevent losing what you have.
Got
And
it.
that's one of the deals with, that's why some people, in order to protect the shoreline, they put, great infrastructure. But again, it's not always, well, it's not the best option. In some cases, you don't even need it. You can do something else. And that's another beautiful thing about living shorelines. They not only become stronger over time, more resilience, but they're actually cheaper. So they have economic benefit as well. It's easier to install and it's cheaper to install than a great infrastructure like that. So there's multiple benefits associated with, using living shorelines as erosion control. But that answer the question about what erosion
definitely.
is? Yes.
I got the definition. So if I was going to take a test on this, I would have I'd have my answer. So get your questions in the Q&A, everybody. But I'll kick it off with another question. So let's say I live in an apartment in Sarasota County. I don't live, on the water. Why should I care about erosion?
All right. Well, you should care. Well, it depends, right? Because if erosion is happening, you might be losing important areas. So let's say this area behind us that we're gonna see, right? Right now, we put a bunch of mangroves here. There's a lot of mangroves being planted to prevent erosion. So now you have all this beautiful area, which is a very good habitat for fish, right? People come and recreate. There's shade provided, so you have it's less hot. So all these different things, right? Plants produce oxygen, so all these different benefits. So it's actually benefiting or bay, a place that we live. So you might live in an apartment, but you're still connected to the bay, right? To the water quality. That's the reason you probably move up here, because you enjoy the bay, you like to go outside, right? You like to see healthy environments. So and people are connected to the community. So even if you live far away from the ocean, you're still connected to the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Like I showed in that slide, we live by the ocean, provide jobs for people, right? Provide all these different services. So we are tied to that health environment. So health environments, it translates to healthy communities. And that's what we want to have, healthy shorelines. And what living shoreline does is that at least, as I said again, maintain some of those ecological services that a natural shoreline provide and prevent them from eroding away. So, which is a win-win, right? So that's what people in apartments should care too, because they care about eating, right? They care about breathing, they care about their wildlife, hopefully. So it's many reasons to care.
Yeah, and I mean, just coming out to where we are today, what is this area called?
So we're in Osprey, Sarasota, but this is Blackbird Point.
Yeah.
So this is a beautiful little park, right? That with a boat ramp, public boat ramp, has a bunch of picnic tables, but it has a great example of a living shoreline, which is preventing this little park to being eroded away and people still using it and enjoying, the bay, which is a great place to be.
Yeah. And actually, we got a question from Steve. Steve wants to know, what plants do you use in South Florida for a living shoreline?
That's a great question. And again, it depends where you are, right, of the area. But here in Southwest Florida, at least, mangroves are, super important and a good element to use in your living shorelines. But those aren't the only ones. So we have 3 native species of mangroves. We're gonna point out some of them behind us. But you can use marshes, right? We have a bunch of marshes that they are adapted to live in salt, kind of brackish water as well. And we have an extension office. We have many different resources. We're gonna point that out then at the end of the presentation too, where you can go to get more information in a whole plant at least. But we can provide all that. So there's a bunch of also ground covers that we'll show you behind us too. Beautiful plants that pollinators love. So there's an array of plants that you can use, which it makes it very exciting because, right, you might want to have a little bit different shoreline than your neighbor. But another thing I was gonna say, one of the best things that you can do in your area, if you're not familiar with what kind of plants, just go to the near side, like maybe a public land, and see what they have, and then that kind of will mimic what you might be able to have. But yeah, there's many different resources from Plant Society, Native Plant Society can help you. IFU Extension Office, we have a lot of resources. We have the Florida Landscaping handbook, which shows you also a lot of the plants that you can use for your shoreline. And it's a good thing to think about this, not just because of the variety and aesthetic, which that's another benefit of living shorelines, right? Provide aesthetic, it's more beautiful at least than having a gray wall. But being able to pick up your right plants for the right place, right? And you don't need much water, you don't need to get in fertilized to get established, or at least not always. So there's a lot of benefits to knowing your plants, and like I said, there's so many different options. So that's a great question, Steve.
Yeah.
Maybe you more than what you had to hear, but yeah.
And then let's take this other question from the audience before we actually get into the shoreline itself. So anonymous attendee wants to know, she says, are they, I have a seawall. How do I put a mangrove tree planter on the bottom in the water to grow a living shoreline?
That's a fantastic question too. So one thing that we actually tell people is this, well, sometimes people just have a riprap already, right? You have a seawall. And in some cases, you're not going to remove the seawall to put a living shoreline. In some cases, you cannot because of the slope or where you are. Maybe you're too close to a navigation channel, which you have a lot of wakes from boats, right? So maybe you need, unfortunately, a great infrastructure. But something that you can do is you can enhance your seawall, which you call like a hybrid kind of, and it still will provide some services, some ecological services, and bring some of that nature kind of aesthetic and healthy environment. Is you can plant a lot of plants behind your seawall. In this case, you can do mangroves, and they're gonna go over it at some point. Maybe rain mangroves will go depending on the height of the seawall, but depends where you are. So if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of wake traffic, you might be able to plant mangroves when the low tide, and you can check with your local extension office that hopefully you have somebody that can help you with that. There's some permitters associated with some of these projects, right? But we can help you navigate those. But yeah, so it depends where you live. If there's not enough force, or you can even help the mangroves put something kind of barrier for them to grow. But once they're big, they should be stable, and they should be floated, I guess, eroded away or taken away by currents. So it really depends where you live, but there's many different plants like mangroves that you can use behind and in front of you seawall.
Exciting.
Yes.
All right, well, I think it's time. Let's go and see the seawall itself. So
living
demo
shoreline,
time.
yes.
I mean, not seawall, living
The
shoreline.
living shoreline.
Oh my gosh, my brain. But this is so exciting. Let's get into the living shoreline. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then Nico's going to follow us. And if we're on the move, so if there are any issues with the sound, let us know in the Q&A. But
So
Armando, tell us what we're seeing.
Yeah, so here, I don't know if you can see the slope here, but this slope, it was graded. So it was a hardly cut, right? You want to have more of a gentle slope for things to be more natural, kind of like you think a shoreline. And they put a bunch of branch covers here. So we have bottomwood, which is not a mangrove, but it's an associate of mangroves, a really important plant. It's a really cool plant too. And the good thing about this one is that, it can grow, it doesn't have to grow by the coastline. You can grow inland. It's a beautiful tree. It's not regulated. So this one is very popular for branch cover, for ornamental, I should say. So when you move even closer to the shoreline, I don't know if you can follow me here.
Yeah.
So we have some red mangroves here. We're talking about mangroves right before how can you put them? These ones were put up like maybe 3 years ago, and see how they're doing right now. We have this in the back. They were put up a little bit more, like 4 or 5 years. And look how big these red mangroves are. With those rough roots, right? Beautiful ecosystem right here for habitat, providing a lot of housing for a lot of animals, from bivalves. When this tide comes in here, you cover this area, so you have a great area for fish to hide, right, to grow, and it's just a rich of life. So you have all this. If you look here to my right, it's more of the same. But it's basically, this was nothing. If you losing away, this was eroding away basically because of you can see this navigation channel behind me, so a lot of boat traffic right passing by. So doing this carving over and over again every single day. So this is preventing this from basically going away, and adding these natural elements, which again I said provide habitat for many different organisms. Right? We see manatees here, we see pelicans coming, and on top of this mangroves. This is only gonna get stronger and taller, so more habitat for all different kind of organisms. So it's a great example again of how you can prevent erosion, add value to your property, add value to public lands, and enhance the beauty and the health of your bay. So by having a living shoreline, and this is what we call a living shoreline, right? Which not every single shoreline looks the same. So we have multiple different examples. This is just one of the living shoreline example that we have in Sarasota County. There's many others. And if you're curious about your area, there's a great page. It's called the Florida Living Shoreline website, and they have a map, and you can go in your area and zoom into your county, and actually find a project nearby that you can visit a living shoreline nearby you to see what it looks like. And a lot of the time, this one have a timeline, so you can see when it was installed, and they have pictures of before, during, and after. And I do have those, but I don't have them with me. But if you just see this when it was bare and sad looking, now this is great. This is a lovely place to be.
I know, I'm just happy to be here today. It's absolutely beautiful. And actually, let's go over and look at, we're really testing the limits of our reception, everybody. But I thought that what you showed us earlier was so cool.
Yeah, this is a great thing to show too. Again, when you do a living shoreline, right, you try to use natural elements. Sometimes you need a little bit more hard infrastructure to be able to treat them. Help with erosion issues, but not be able to make it if you help.
We tested the limits for reception.
All right, so you guys lost us there.
Yeah. All right, let's see if we're back. We tested, yeah, we tested the limits of our reception, but at least you got to see it. So explain what they just saw.
So I'm gonna, so what you saw like this huge mat, maybe like a round core log. That's what it's called. So basically it's a roll of fiber of coconut. And that what it does is help stabilize the shoreline,
Yeah.
right? And give time for those plants to stabilize themselves until that core log is not needed. And because it's made out of fiber, basically it will disintegrate and just, erode and decompose. And so it's something that is short term and it's good stuff for the plants, giving time to the plants to grow and stabilize the soil. And that's the time, yeah, it's something that, it won't pollute the water basically. So yeah, that's a great example of, another element that you can add to your living shorelines. But you have oyster bags, right? You have all different things. We have reef from prism, but it's another concept of my colleagues that develop in UF. So they have all these different things. And like I said, we have so many resources that you can go online and check them all out. But there is very innovative projects when it comes to living shorelines, right? And that's the beauty of it. I think that it's not, they all look differently, that you can make them look totally different and they can accomplish multiple objectives depending on what not just preventing erosion, but actually if you want to bring, the habitat back, if you want to create a place for birds to nest. I mean, there's many different things that you can do with a living shoreline on top of preventing erosion, which
100%.
is, yeah.
I think it's just fundamentally, it's just a happy place to be. I mean, we had a lovely time just sitting out in the beautiful sunshine in the Sunshine State, enjoying the living shoreline today. So you can create a lovely habitat for yourself and all the creatures.
Absolutely.
All right, so you got to see a living shoreline today. So we are sharing our screen again, and I'll just go to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do another quick question break. Now that you had the demo, ask us questions about what you just saw. You saw some mangroves. The sound cut out, but you got to see some of the infrastructure that was added here to help support the living shoreline. Ask us questions about it. We're here to listen to you. So I know mangroves have kind of been the star of the show today, but are there any plants in the living shoreline that you think are underappreciated that don't get as much attention?
Well, salt marshes. I don't necessarily think that they get under. A lot of people think that grass, a marsh is basically a type of grass. They can grow, that they might do their job. When you think about it, a mangrove, it's easy to imagine a mangrove being able to absorb that energy and dissipate and send in multiple ways. That's the difference between a seawall, right? They just reflect that energy. Mangroves, plants like that, they basically kind of absorb like a sponge that energy and deflect in multiple ways. So that's why they decrease the force. And that's the concept of it. So a lot of people don't think about sometimes like we have in the north of the state, right? You have marshes, and you move even north in the country, right? You don't have mangroves because mangroves they don't go by San Agustin, that area, right? And the Panhandle and the Big Bend area are kind of, now with temperatures changing, you might see a migration of them.
Yeah.
But it's not happening, it's not going to happen in one day. So you have other plants like marshes that they're not very tall, that they do exactly the same thing that mangroves. And a lot of people don't think about them being as strong and sturdy, but yeah, a bunch of grasses, they can absorb a lot of that energy, so they can do the job as well, like mangroves do. So again, that's why checking your area and what it grows in your area naturally is the best way to go when you're gonna build your living shoreline and design it.
Got it. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned other places, because I actually noticed when I was looking at the attendee list that some people friends of mine from Africa are actually tuning in. So it's great to see you all. But you can plant a living shoreline anywhere where there's water, right?
Oh, anywhere. The only thing is, it's just the way semantics, I guess, or the way people, when we talk about freshwater system, normally we don't say living shorelines.
Yeah.
But I don't see why. I mean, you can. But so when you talk about living shoreline, you're normally talking about brackish system, like, this estuary, which can be salinity, can be varied, but it is, mix of saltwater and freshwater. And then you can have a marine open system, right? More like coastal system. So when you think about living shoreline, normally it's marine coastal environments. But yeah, you can create any, the same concept, right? For freshwater systems. And here in Florida, we have a lot of people with retention ponds, right?
Yeah.
And again, you can do a beautiful prevent erosion from your retention pond and bring a lot of, good elements to your retention pond that will help with the bay, like slow down nutrients. right? Keep sediments in place and provide habitat for many different organisms. So yeah, so you can really build a living shoreline anywhere.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. Anywhere where there's water, you can create, you can use plants to prevent erosion.
And again, that's just one element, right? In some areas, like if you have oysters growing in that area, but maybe you lost the oysters due to they were removed for construction, for material for construction, or harvested for consumption, and you want to bring them back. Oysters are great because they also create reefs. So that's, again, it's not just plants, right? It's a combination of many different elements.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of a living shoreline, that you can become very creative. And yeah, and people are becoming very creative with the Living Shoreline project, which is very exciting.
Amazing. Oh, the questions are pouring in. Okay, Guillermo wants to know, please repeat what the brown fibers in the floor were.
Yeah, it's called a coconut coir log. So it's a COIR log, and might be the brand name, but it's basically imagine like a huge roll of coconut fiber rolled into place, tied with some rope that will degrade, that is not made out of plastic. And basically what it does is you kind of stuck it in there. They put some stakes to keep it in place, but just helping with that, you lost the slope to erosion. So you're trying to bring the slope back so this plant can have a natural kind of sequencing of the plants, right? And that's something not only will help you with the stabilization of plants, but also something that in say with sea level rising, right? You want these plants to be able to move inland, the right plants. And that's another problem we have or mangroves, because we don't give them a lot of space now to grow. Now, if they hit a seawall, mangroves, they're not going to be able to go behind it, right? Unless you do to help them out. So with sea levels increasing, we need those plants to have a place to migrate. So thinking about natural shorelines or living shorelines is a good way to keep those habitats, keep those plants, and adapting themselves to these changes that we're seeing and that we're going to be seeing obviously in the next decades and so on.
Yeah, definitely. And then Steve wants to know, how long does it take for a living shoreline to become effective in preventing erosion?
Yeah, that's another great question. Well, again, it really depends, and I know I'm saying that it really depends but every living shoreline is different because you're taking into consideration many different things, like how much area you have from open water where the wind can hit or build up, which is the fetch, right? What elements you have creating the erosion, like you have a canal like we have in like a boat, a ramp that what a lot of boats passing by. So it really depends. So the forces associated with your erosion, right, and the plants that you choose. Some plants grow faster than others. So it can take a few years, but that's the beauty of it, that you don't design it all at once. You cannot decide it by steps, and you can assess the success. And sometimes you might have to put some elements that you might want to remove later on to help out some of those plants to get established. And I'm going to give you an example. So we put some of those mangroves, and you want to get taller mangroves, like you don't want to get tiny little bit mangroves. Maybe in the back you can use them, but then sometimes you want to put stakes, so you want to put something in there to hold them in place to help them. Then maybe you want to remove later on. So there's different things. So it takes time, but it start working from the very beginning. So it's not something that you're gonna lose your shoreline just because you didn't do something drastic. That is the way it works. When it's a well-designed project, that's taken into account. So you can start from the very beginning, preventing slowing down erosion, and then again making it stronger. And another good thing about these plants that because of the way they, like if you look at the red mangrove, I don't know if you were able to see it, they have the proper roots, right? So it creates an array of roots. They also trap a lot of sediments, trap leaves, and it's basically like decomposing material there. So you're actually getting more soil, more sun. So sometimes you can increase your proper line by having mangroves because they're actually creating more shoreline.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a great thing.
Fascinating stuff. And we have one more question. We'll take this question before we get to some of the stuff you can do actively, some of the volunteer opportunities and action opportunities. Anonymous attendee wants to know, could we build an offshore living shoreline to slow the storm surge? Wow, that's a tongue twister.
Yes. Well, you definitely, a lot of municipalities are looking into the stormwater systems, right? And because we're changing the hydrology, when we build, we change how water flow, right? So a lot of the stormwater ditches, they basically just, creeks that were modified, or we're just changing how water goes into reach in our case, or bay. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do, not necessarily call a living shoreline. If you were listening before, maybe not. When we use the term living shoreline, normally refer to marine and coastal environments, but you can create, a lot of municipalities already doing this, right? Trying to add natural elements to a lot of storm water ditches or like creeks or stuff like that to have the more natural flow, which will slow down again how water flows. It still provides some habitat for all the species, right? It prevents nutrients from going all at once, flush into the system, and yeah, so in absorbing pollutants and creating all these different things. So yeah, so there's a lot of things that you can do inland to prevent, that kind of stuff.
Good stuff.
Yes.
All right. So you all have got gotten excited about living shorelines now you're going to learn what you can do.
Yeah, so what you can do? Well, the first thing to me, and I always tell people, is like educate yourself and educate others, because the more you know, it's the easier to talk about this kind of things and easier to make people, aware of why these things are needed and why it's important to think about these things, right? And it's not about just doing things for doing things. This is better alternatives, better solutions, right? More resilient solutions, especially for this kind of stuff, right? That we're talking about sea level rise. So in this picture, you see people planting. Another thing that you can do is volunteer when we do restoration projects. A lot of public lands depends on volunteers. So finding out, you look up public land, you look up beach, park, they need volunteers. And sometimes it's not just for planting plants, if you're doing other things, removal of invasive species, which is, if you're gonna plant natives, you might have to remove a lot of invasive species. So find volunteer opportunities, right? Take courses with us. We have the Florida Mathematics program. That's another course that you can learn about shoreline restoration, marine habitat restoration, and now open up for volunteer opportunities. If you live in an HOA or you have, an area where you have a canal, you have a lot of shoreline property, well, another thing you can do is work with your community, right? To bring people like myself or my colleagues just to help you assess your shoreline and provide advice of what you can do to try to bring some of those elements that we have lost because, coastal development. So that's one thing that you can do. Educate yourself, volunteer, get involved. More directly, I guess, opportunities for us. Each county that has a Florida Sea Grant agent like myself, we have multiple citizen science, projects. Again, from, one day removal of invasive species to monitoring species that actually are good indicators of ecosystem health, like the horseshoe crab monitoring program, right? We monitor for horseshoe crab expanding activity, and movement of horseshoe crabs. So normally, if you have an area that is healthy, you should see an increase or at least, a relatively number of horseshoe crabs. And that's what we're tracking over time. So you can volunteer with me and others just to assess some of these species that might be a good indicator of ecosystem health. And there are all many opportunities. So that's one thing that you can do. You basically get involved, educate folks, reach to us, and care for the environment.
Yeah, if you're in Florida, find your local extension office, or
Absolutely.
anywhere in the states. And for our international friends, many other countries have extension too. So, and also you can just email me if you're like, I really need something to do. I can make some recommendations no matter where
and
you
we
are.
have, something that we did with after one of the big storms that we have, a lot of people were concerned about all the stuff that got trapped in the mangroves, which they do a good job at trapping stuff.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they also do a good job of trapping things that shouldn't be there, right?
Got it.
Human-made artifacts that become marine debris because the storm took them or people didn't discard them properly anyway. So a lot of people ask us, what can we, they did ask us, what can we do? And we put up a webinar, which we do have a recorded, you can watch, about the best way protocol to clean up mangrove areas, because you can also cause a lot of damage trying to do good things. So we do have programs like that, which are applicable to anybody in the globe that has mangrove areas. So that's another thing that you can do. But just be aware of, your surroundings. I guess educate yourself, knowing what you have around you is extremely important. So you realize what you're losing, because a lot of people don't even know, the plans that they have. So start getting to know your local place. That's a great things to do.
Yeah, get outside, everybody.
Yes. So what else can you do, right? You see my pictures here. Don't do the thing on the left, right? That's a seawall. Again, it's not absorbing any of the energy. Send it away. Took away a bunch of habitat for a lot of animals that we care for. By the way, in our area, about 80 to 85% of the species that we use recreationally, either or commercially, fish are associated with mangroves and seagrasses. So we need that kind of habitat, right, for them to grow healthy. So don't do the stuff to the left, do more to stuff to the right. You don't need a seawall or riprap in every location, right? We can do better and we can maintain some of those ecological services that we have. And I think that's my last slide. Oh, it's that, don't do that, but do that.
I love this animation. I thought that was such a good touch. But yeah, living shorelines, it's the way to go.
Yes.
So I also wanted to step in and share some of so Armando mentioned many of the Citizen Science Project's extension offers, which is very exciting. I know I have participated in Horseshoe Crab Watch. It's on my laptop. I rep it. There are lots of different, yes, exactly. There are lots of different citizen, neighborhood, community participatory science projects. The term goes by a lot of different names. Basically, I'm going to call it citizen science, just for brevity's sake. But citizen science is any way a member of the public, so any one of us of any age, any background, any level of training, can move science forward. So typically, this involves collecting or analyzing data for ongoing research projects. And data is just information. Data can be numbers, where you take measurements of inches of rainfall, or maybe you use a kit to test your air quality. Our data can be pictures you take. You want to take pictures of different plants and animals to monitor their populations, to help researchers and scientists understand, are these animal populations doing well, or do they need some help? Or with Horseshoe Crab Watch, data is the observations you take of the horseshoe crabs. The purpose of the project's in the name. So when you collect or analyze data for these research projects that scientists have started, you're doing citizen science. And the great thing about citizen science is that it helps make this complex world a little bit more understandable. I mean, one thing I always hear folks at SciStarter, which is the world's biggest citizen science organization and a supporter of today's program, is that scientists don't have enough eyes, ears, and perspectives to know everything there is to know, to understand everything that needs to be understood, to answer every question we want to answer about the world. So when we do citizen science, we all come together and we turn our curiosity about the world into real scientific impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you work on citizen science projects.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
Well, it's so rewarding. Not only, again, I get the help, that I don't have the capacity to be everywhere and do all the things that I wanted to do. So having people that, they care and they actually got the training and they're qualified to do it, they provide a great service. And I'm going to give you a more close example here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find places where the horseshoe crabs were coming, right? And
Yeah.
there were some clues that were there. Well, one of my volunteers, like, no, I know of a place. He took me, and that's one of the main places that we actually monitor for horseshoe crab, because this person was volunteering for me for that program. He's the one who knew, and he's the one who directed me to the place. So a lot of knowledge is, behind or with those volunteer sciences, right? So it's so many things that they bring in to enhance my program. So I really like working with people. And the other thing that's great about working with volunteers that, like, I'm a marine biologist, this is my background, right? But then you have somebody who maybe, I don't know, a pilot or a nurse or something. They're like, oh, I always wanted to do science, but they never had a chance. So now they have an interesting background, right? But also you sharing your passion with them and they're sharing some of their passion. And it's just a great way to meet people. So I love working with volunteers.
Yeah, I think citizen science, the cool thing about it is it's a true partnership. Like the example Armando just gave, he was able to work with this volunteer in partnership, leveraging that volunteer's expertise about where the horseshoe crabs were to understand the populations better. That's so exciting.
It is exciting.
And then so citizen science, and this is me on my soapbox a little bit when we think about like climate change, right? It's something that definitely scares me. And the thing about climate change and just environmental problems in our increasingly changing world is that it's hyper local. So the way I experience climate change might be different than my friend across town. As temperatures rise, maybe I have more trees in my neighborhood, so I'm less likely to get heat stroke than my friend who has fewer trees. Or maybe I have a living shoreline in my backyard and I live on the water, so I'm less likely to experience, the ramifications of flooding as opposed to my friend who doesn't have that. So because climate change is so granular and the differences really vary from place to place, I think citizen science is super important in terms of understanding the problem. So for me, when I feel powerless and, with these problems associated with the environment and climate change, when I feel powerless, I do citizen science. I try to create a data-driven understanding of the world. And when we have that foundation, that could be a jumping off point for climate change solutions. So when you feel powerless in the face of climate change, hopefully citizen science can help give you that power back. And actually, someone has a question, so let's pose this. Anonymous attendee wants to know, are there any examples of condos in Sarasota that have planted mangroves between their lawns and their seawalls to allow the roots to grow over the wall into the water?
Yes, and you might have to reach out to me because I forgot the name of the community, but there are a bunch of, so one of the things that, you asked me earlier, one of the things that I like about my job. So one of the things I like about my job is that people call me up and they ask me to come to the properties, and that's not the only thing I do, but I love meeting folks and help them make changes, and advise them into what they want to improve, basically the community. They want us find solutions for the issues and the problems. So yeah, there's some examples. My email, I don't think it's in the last slide, but we can provide it, but I'm easy to find. So if you go to our Sarasota County Extension, UFIFAS Sarasota County Extension, you will find me listed there. So you can email me and I can list some examples of it. And not just in Sarasota County, but there are other places that people have done that as well. So yeah, so there are some examples there.
Awesome. Really quickly on the citizen science portion to wrap us up today, there are lots of citizen science projects like Horseshoe Crab Watch that Extension runs. I wanted to spotlight this project. It's actually separate from Extension, but they partnered with me for my PhD research. It's called IC Change. So IC Change, it's a global community of people just like you, so people all around the world, and our friends who are watching internationally, you can do IC Change too. It's where you document the real life effects of climate change and you help contribute to solutions. So what does this mean? It's a very simple project where you basically just describe what you're seeing in terms of climate impacts. So IC Change, they basically turn anybody and everybody into a climate reporter. So you can see the example here, it's of sunny day flooding. someone saw a community member dealing with the effects of water bubbling up on the streets when it's sunny because of related to climate change, related to what we're observing in trends. And they said, hey, I'm seeing the sidewalks being flooded. I'm really worried about this community member. And believe it or not, this picture and the description of it and this person's opinion, that's qualitative data. That's their assessment of the human impact of climate change. And this qualitative data, the words and pictures, are paired with quantitative data like inches of rainfall to give a full picture of what's going on with climate change. And different organizations, including the city of Miami, have used the data from IC Change to help target their infrastructure solutions. But regardless of whether or not the area you live has a formal partnership with IC Change, you can contribute to the understanding of climate change by giving your own qualitative words and pictures data assessment of the lived impact of climate change on you. So it's super simple to participate in IC Change. You can find it on SciStarter. I have it linked on the ClimateCast live page. It'll be included in the follow-up email if you registered. I'll also drop it on the comments on the Facebook live stream. It's also available at bit.ly/ClimateCast live. You create an account, and if you use the same email address you used to make your SciStarter account, everything tracks back to your SciStarter dashboard. Shameless plug. You create an account, then you just post your sighting, you describe what you see, what's in front of your own eyes. Anybody can do that. And you give the assessment of what the impact is on you and your community. And then you're able to browse and see other folks' contributions, and maybe you can be part of the conversation about climate change solutions based on that. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends at SciStarter. They're trying to get people throughout April. You can participate in IC Change today, but if you happen to do it in April, you're contributing to the Million Acts of Science. We're trying to get people all around the world to all do at least one scientific act, so we can get up to 1 million. So anybody can do science through citizen science. Do Horseshoe Crab Watch. Participate in iNaturalist. That's another really fun project that a lot of people do to document plants and animals. Do the IC Change project I mentioned if you're curious about climate change and environmental problems and want to get out there and observe your community. You can participate in IC Change in urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, wherever you are. You can take pictures of climate impacts like extreme heat or flooding or whatever way climate change is impacting you, even erosion. If you observe erosion, you can take a picture of that and submit it to IC Change, and you can contribute to the scientific understanding of climate change. All right, so we're almost at the end here. You learned a lot about living shorelines today. You learned about some opportunities to get involved. You learned that extension is a resource for you if you want to volunteer and take action or just learn more and take some of their classes. And you learned about IC Change, one of my favorite citizen science projects. Let's see if there are any final questions. And while we get that in, I want to check with you, Armando. Is there anything else you didn't get a chance to say today that you want people to know?
No, I guess no, but just a reminder that we're there, with resources, extensions. We are very fortunate in the state that, we have an extension office in every county in the state.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of resources for you, a lot of programs from youth development to, your regular solution for your life. So yeah, just call us and use us because we're here to help.
Fantastic. Yes, Extension's a great resource in the community. Heather says, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you. Heather, I love it. That's what we want to hear.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
And we'll just keep it moving. So that's all, folks. And you have a last chance to get questions in, everybody, as we go over this last info. So get those questions in. But tell us a little bit about Sea Grant.
Yeah, so Sea Grant. So it's called Sea Grant because it's associated with the Land Grant University. So we're the Sea Grant agents. So we have a website, right? We're part of UF, we're part of UFIFAS, the Department of, UFIFAS. But we have a website, which is a tremendous website because it has a lot of resources, not just educational stuff, publications, but also, like I said, opportunities for you to volunteer. We have it laid out. You can find out who's who and where are located. So there's no reason not to reach out to us, right? You have it right there in front of you. And we also link to other resources, right? Depending on what's happening, from hurricane and disaster, aid to multiple things. So it's keeping current. So it's a lot of resources, like I said. So yeah, that's it. Just a reminder that we're there, right? Part of potential family. So for a Sea Grant.
Fantastic. And we would love for you all to do the survey. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat.
Somebody asked a question. Maybe.
Oh, yes. Let's get that last question. While we get the last question, feel free to go ahead and start filling out that survey. Tina says, thank you so much for what you're doing. Florida needs you. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Tina.
That's awesome.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and
I'm
put
surprised
the
somebody asked me what my favorite fish is.
Yes, what is your favorite fish? Tell us.
Well, I have many, but yeah, I guess bonnefish, I guess the Goliath grouper, and cartilage fish, the tiger shark, I guess.
Wow.
So Yeah, it's two. And I want to think, why did I mention Golai grouper? Because Golai groupers, when they're 0 to 8 years old, they live between the seagrass and the mangroves right here, and then they move offshore. So even, those giant animals that you see offshore, they start here, or they're connected with the estuaries, and in a way, we live in shoreline as well. So
Favorite fish, and I know you study sharks.
yes,
so
I do. So yes, the tiger shark's my second, or I guess my other favorite.
yeah,
But I have
well,
many.
sharks technically aren't fish, right?
Well, they are fish.
They are
Yes, they are
fish.
fish. Yes, they are fish. It's just that they are not bony fish. They're cartilage, but they are fish. They technically fish. That's why the whale shark is the biggest, or I guess the largest fish in the ocean.
All right. Well, everyone, if you take nothing else away from today's presentation, sharks are fish.
Yes.
You have learned that today. I put in the chat a link to the survey. So if you would be so kind to participate in our research, it's totally optional, but we would love it if you did. You can go ahead and click on that survey. And then once you're done on the survey, you can also sign up for an interview with me and help me understand a little more, the impact of this presentation on your understanding of the environment, climate change, living shorelines, what you learned. You even have the option in the interview to share your screen. The interviews are going to be on Zoom. You can share your screen with me and take me through your IC change observation and tell me about what's changing in your community. And that will really help me, number one, finish my dissertation. Number two, help me understand, more importantly, help me understand how people like yourselves think about the environment and climate change. So thank you again, everybody. I'm going to open up the Q&A for any last questions.
Tomorrow, when is the next one, you said? They can join you for the next of this?
Yes. So if you all want to travel with me virtually to Pensacola tomorrow, it's actually at 4 p.m. Central Time, so 1 hour later, technically, tomorrow. And you can register for that at bit.ly/ClimateCast live. And I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat too, in case you want to learn a little bit more about erosion in Pensacola during tomorrow's program with Carrie. So ClimateCast live. All right. And last chance, everybody, to get any questions in. And if you can't get your questions in the chat, not in the chat, in the Q&A box right now, that's okay. You can email me. I'll also be able to forward you Armando's way. Are there different sustainability folks who work for Sarasota County?
Absolutely. Yes, we do have a sustainability, person at the office too. So we have a lot of people thinking about these issues, right? So I'm only one of the team, but there's many different people working in sustainability, resilience and climate change related issues. So if you need more information, not just about living shoreline, like I said again, we're here to help. Our location is Twin Lakes Park. So for those in Sarasota County, it's Twin Lakes Park. That's out of Clark Road. Like if you go into Mayaca State Park, yeah. But like I said before, every county in the state of Florida has an extension office. So reach out to your extension office.
Definitely. Yeah. Reach out to your extension office, everybody. And then final thoughts too. There's the Climate Smart Floridians course, which is also linked on the ClimateCast live page, but we'll be archiving the recording of today's presentation there. And you can also get lots of great climate change info from Climate Smart Floridians, that course online created by Extension and Sea Grant as a free resource to you. We'll be putting this recording on Streaming Science's website, and it'll also be on that Facebook page. So there are lots of different ways you can share today's recording with your friends and family. So I think unless there's anything else, we'll end it here.
This is great. I had a great time, so I hope people did too. And and looking forward to hear back from you.
Awesome. All right, everybody, be in touch. Talk soon. I'll stop sharing here, and we'll go ahead and end today's presentation. Bye, everybody.